following image. Here the examiner is trying to push the knee joint into varus. If the knee goes more into varus, it means that there is no lateral collateral ligament which is present, which is preventing from this excessive varus from happening. Because the examiner, if he tries to push the knee into varus and the knee successfully moves into more varus compared to the normal, that means it is no lateral collateral ligament, or there is a lateral collateral ligament injury. Now, if you look at the test, is it Latchman test? No. It is a test for medial meniscal injury? No. It is the test for lateral meniscal injury also? No. So it is a test for lateral collateral ligament injury. And the name of the test is varus stress test. That when you stress the knee joint to move into varus, it is moving more into varus compared to the normal, because there is no lateral collateral ligament which is preventing this excessive varus from happening. So that is the answer for this question. That is varus stress test positive. Next, all of the following features suggest the injury to the brachial plexus proximal to the dorsal. That means preganglionic injury. So these are the features the examiner is asking about, the preganglionic injury to the brachial plexus. The central diaphragm, means central muscular paralysis, is a feature. Central musculatures like diaphragm, like scapular muscles, so if they are getting paralysis, is a clinical feature. Burning sensations in the anesthetized hand, yes, because it is a withdrawal reflex. It does not involve the central nervous system directly. So burning, if the patient is able to feel the burn when all the other features are lost, it is the burning sensation in the anesthetized hand, which is also a feature. Negative histamine test, what happens in case of preganglionic injury? It has to be positive. The histamine test has to be positive in preganglionic injury to the brachial plexus. Associated fracture of the cervical spine is also a feature. So what is the answer for the question number 64? That histamine test, if it is positive, it is for preganglionic. If it is negative, it is for postganglionic. But in the options, it is given as negative histamine, which obviously is the answer for this question. Next is question number 65. In post-polio paralysis, hand to knee gait is due to the weakness of, hand to knee, where the patients present or patient walk by putting the hand onto the anterior aspect of the knee joint, pushing it into extension. That is known as hand to knee gait. It is because of quadriceps weakness. Because normally it is the quadriceps which used to keep the knee joint into extension while weight bearing on the affected limb. But if the quadriceps are weak, then every time patient bear weight on that affected limb, it will be thrusted into flexion because quadriceps is ineffective. So the ineffectivity of the quadriceps will be compromised by the patient, or the patient will be having a complementary effect to that weakness by putting the hand onto the anterior aspect of the knee joint and then pushing it into extension, known by the name of hand to knee gait. So in post-polio residual paralysis, which is a very common phenomena, which is likely to occur or cause paralytic abnormalities in these anti-gravity muscles like quadriceps. Now, which of the following statement, next question, that which of the following statement is against the principle of tendon transfer? That when you perform tendon transfer, there are several of the principles that you need to follow. If we look option wise, like first one, minimum power of the donor muscle should be 4. This is true, because the moment you erase it from the insertion, it will be reduced to less than 1. For example, the power effectively was 5. After insertion, it will become 4. If previously it was 4, after insertion it will become 3. Imagine if previously it was 3, then after insertion it will become 2. And power 2 means no movement against gravity. It is of no use. So minimum power of the donor muscle should be at least 4. That is 1. Second, action of the donor muscle should be antagonistic. Yes. Actions of the donor muscle, the muscles which you are using it in order to replace the activity of the muscle which you have used previously, or the muscle which is lost, should be agonistic, having similar kind of the movement, not antagonistic. So that obviously is against the principle. Joint around the tendon transfer should be mobile. Imagine if you perform a tendon transfer around a fixed joint, what will happen? There is no role of performing a tendon transfer, because in a fixed joint you cannot bring the movement back. Okay, and tendon should be rooted subcutaneously. Yes, for the purpose of rehabilitation, you need to have the subcutaneous root to the tendons. Okay. in order to prevent the contractures also, and in order to rehabilitate the tendon in a easier fashion, there should be a subcutaneous route. So all the tendon transfer principles are there in the options, except for the one that the actions of the two tendon, donor and recipient, should not be antagonistic, it should be agonistic, it should be synergistic. So hope you get the answer for the question number 66. Next is question number 67, that elderly patient slipped in the bathroom. Okay, one is elderly patient slipped in the bathroom means trivial trauma, was not able to bear weight on the affected limb. That means there is some significant injury which has happened to any of the bone. X-ray is as follows. What is the attitude of the limb at the time of presentation? Now if you look at the X-ray very closely, then what you will find is the fracture in the neck of the femur on the left side, that there is a fracture in the neck of the femur in the left side. Now what will happen? These are the kind of the patient which will present with external rotation as well as with flexion. So external rotation is one of the finding which is present in both these two. Abduction and shortening, adduction and lengthening. With these kind of the injury which is happening at the level of the neck, lengthening cannot occur. How the lengthening of the limb could be there with or without fracture? There will be no lengthening. If at all lengthening has to appear, it is apparent lengthening, not the true lengthening. But here it is the external rotation, abduction and shortening which happens when the patient is presented to you on couch. He will be landing with the external rotation of the limb, with the abduction of the limb, and slightest amount of the shortening, not too much significant, less than 1 centimeter of the shortening. So answer for this question is A, that the patient with the fractured neck of the femur will be having this kind of the position of the limb on the affected side when the patient is lying on the couch. That means the limb is in external rotation, the limb will be in abduction, and there will be a true shortening of less than 1 centimeter, although insignificant, but it will be shortened.